Ignore this. I'm moving. Again. I mean, that sort of works. It conveys what's supposed to be there. You guys have been here enough. You know what the background is supposed to look like. Just imagine it in your brain and we can pretend it's there. I'm moving again, which is why I don't have makeup on and the background of my video looks like that, and I was too lazy to set my lights up today, so I'm just using my window, which makes my glasses have a really bad reflection. I might just take those off. No, yeah, I'll take them off. There you go. That's a little bit better. I'll just splash a filter on this and then it's like nothing happened. Perfect. Alternative titles to this video include: I spent New Year's Day doing Blockage protocol. How is your 2022 going so far? I cried myself to sleep on New Year's Day. I stopped taking my medication and bad things keep happening to me. Owning ferrets is like walking through a paper mill blindfolded. You don't know what's going on, it smells kind of bad, and you're under a constant state of stress. Basically, my 2022 has started out kind of interestingly. Who has 4 legs, a kind of bad attitude I love with all my heart, but ruined my New Year's Day?
It's me.
It's Elara. New Year's Day was an interesting one for us. It brought me and Elara a little bit closer, and I went through one of the panics that every single ferret owner is going to face at some point in their life. It also reminded me of okay, Elara wants to be put down. She's gonna get put down. Fine, I see how it is. You don't like being on camera. You're embarrassed because of what you did to yourself. That's fair. I'm embarrassed for you too. It also reminded me of the big importance of 2 very important key items for every ferret owner to make sure that they always have on hand, and that is Vaseline and a syringe. Please, if you own ferrets, make sure you have these 2 things always with you. And that is what the point of the story I'm about to tell is, because I want everyone who owns ferrets to be aware of how these situations happen to every single type of ferret owner, from a novice ferret owner to an extremely experienced ferret owner. You need these 2 items. Please take this as a sign to get them if you don't have them already. What happened on New Year's Day was that Elara had a blockage and I had to perform emergency blockage protocol at home with her. Had I not performed the emergency blockage protocol, I don't think she would be with me right now. Ferrets are extremely prone to medical emergencies. They are very fragile, but have the big, bold personalities of an animal that is not fragile. So emergencies are going to happen no matter what. If you own a ferret, you will experience a medical emergency at some point. That is my guarantee to you. Let's go through my day so I can tell you guys sort of what happened. So New Year's Day started out as a good day. It's when I started doing packing because I'm moving to my new place, so I was really excited about that. I packed bookshelves, which is why they're empty right now. For breakfast, my ferrets got dressed quail, which is something that they eat once a week. It's really good for their teeth, and they really like it. Elara ate her breakfast very quickly. I don't know why. Maybe she was just really hungry, or she was really excited for quail, because she does like it quite a lot. But either way, she wolfed that bad boy down. And also that morning I had cut the quail up into little smaller pieces than I normally do, because my other girls haven't really been into eating raw meaty bones lately, and I find that if I cut it up a little bit smaller, they're more willing to eat it. But that also means that when you have a ferret like Elara that really likes raw meaty bones, they aren't going to chew them as much, unfortunately, and that's what led us to this situation. Looking back on it, that should have been my red flag. Rest of the day passes uneventfully until 5 o'clock hits. At 5 o'clock, Elara started vomiting. An animal vomiting obviously always means that there is something going on, and that can be from a mild reaction to a life-threatening situation. In my experience, Elara is one of my ferrets who just randomly gets an upset stomach sometimes. Her vomiting once to me was just okay, Elara ate something, she's gonna throw up, she's gonna take a nap for an hour, and then she's gonna be fine. Because that's such a common occurrence for Elara. What isn't a common occurrence for Elara is that half an hour later she threw up again. At that point, I thought to myself, okay, this is abnormal, there's something going on. Her vomit throughout all of this had these like big chunks of the quail she had been eating for breakfast, mostly just big chunks of meat with a little bit of bone here and there. I kept an eye on her to sort of see where her energy levels were at. She was a little bit drowsy, but you know, when you throw up, you feel a little bit sick. So I just took her and I put her in the cage and I stayed here and I just kind of kept an eye on her. 20 minutes later, she was throwing up again. And at that point, I know, okay, this isn't just her being sick, there is something going on. So I took Elara and I brought her into my bathroom, which is connected right to my bedroom just through a baby gate, so it's really easy for me to monitor her from there. I wanted to put her in there just so that I could separate her from my girls in case it was something that could have been contagious, and also because it's a lot easier for me to clean up vomit if it's on my tile floor as opposed to, you know, under my bed and around my room. I went and sat with her in there for a bit, and at this point her energy levels started to decrease a little bit more. She was pretty drowsy. I put a bed in there for her and she just kind of curled up and went to sleep, and then when I was sitting on the floor in the bathroom, she came and laid next to me for a bit before going back to the bed. This is where the first tool that I said you need to make sure you have if you are a ferret owner comes in, a syringe. So when anyone's throwing up, they're losing a lot of fluids. For ferrets, dehydration is really life-threatening because they are a very small animal, so throwing up and losing a little bit of liquid actually becomes a lot of liquid when you compare it to a larger animal like a human being. So if you have a ferret that is vomiting, it's really important that you try and keep them hydrated. The easiest way to do this is with a syringe. All you gotta do is just fill the syringe up with some water and offer it to them through their mouth. If they're fighting you and they really don't want to drink it, that might be a sign to give them a couple minutes before you try and give them water, or just to give them only a little bit because their stomach is probably still upset. You don't want to be giving them water instantly after they throw up because they're probably just going to throw up again. I normally wait about 10 to 15 minutes after they vomit to start giving them water, and only a little bit. Like with this syringe, I'll fill it up 3 times and give it to them, so that would be 3 milliliters of water, just every half hour to an hour depending on how sick they are. At this point, Elara was willing to drink water out of the syringe on her own. I think she was feeling kind of thirsty, so she knew that this was going to hopefully make her feel a little better. But unfortunately, about 25 minutes later, she was throwing up again, making it the 4th time that she had thrown up. It was about 7 o'clock at night by this point, and because it was New Year's Day, the exotic clinic that I normally take my ferrets to was not open. Because this had been her 4th time throwing up, I knew something was wrong. When ferrets are throwing up, the most likely cause, if you aren't seeing too many signs of other things, is that they have some sort of internal blockage. So I started Blockage protocol. If you are not familiar with Blockage protocol, that is where the second item that I said you absolutely need to make sure you have if you own ferrets comes in. Vaseline. If you are unfamiliar with Blockage protocol and you own a ferret, you need to familiarize yourself with it because you will end up doing it at some point. I guarantee you. I'll have a link down below for the Blockage protocol that I normally follow. In that one, they do say to also use pumpkin puree. I opt not to, and I just use the Vaseline. That is just a personal choice, so, you know, so long as you're giving them something to help them out, that's what's important. What does the Vaseline do? So Vaseline, you feed it to your ferret just a little bit. It'll lube up their insides, and it'll also just pass really quickly through their digestive system so that it'll help them push out anything that might be stuck in their digestive system. It is not a flawless technique. There's a chance that it's not going to work. It really just depends on what they have stuck inside of them and where it is. Believe it or not, most ferrets are very willing to eat Vaseline. Just try and offer it to them and see if they will eat it. There's a likely chance that they'll just be willing to eat it, which is just super weird. I don't know why they like the taste of it, but they do. Elara wasn't actually willing to eat it the first time I offered it to her, so at that point you do need to force them. So with Elara, I just scruffed her and I put some Vaseline on my finger and I kind of tried to just like wipe it on her bottom lip so it was kind of forced into her mouth. Thankfully at that point, once it was in her mouth, she was willing to eat it. I was only able to give her a little bit and then she started completely refusing it, so I just stopped fighting her at that point because I knew she still had sort of an upset stomach and I just wanted to let her settle, with the plan to come back and give her some more later. About 35 minutes later, she was throwing up again, and at that point I did call the emergency vet because I was concerned it was something that I wasn't going to be able to handle at home. But it was New Year's Day, so that means that the exotic clinic I normally take my ferrets to wasn't open, and the only clinic was the VCA emergency clinic. I did call them to ask if they thought I should bring her in, and I already told them that I think she has a blockage, that's my suspicion, and they kind of told me that it was up to me if I wanted to bring her in or not. She had vomited 5 times, which is a red flag in their opinion. The problem is the VCA clinic doesn't normally see exotics. The best thing that they can do for me at the 24-hour clinic is put my ferret on supportive care and do an ultrasound or an x-ray to see what's wrong, but they can't do surgery and they basically just have to keep her stable until the exotic clinic opens up. In my opinion, at that point, it wasn't worth it for me to take her in. I could do supportive care for her at home, and since I pretty much already knew what was wrong, I didn't feel like it was necessary for me to take her in for an ultrasound. And that is something that is completely my decision based on what I was seeing in my ferret that I was familiar with. I know there are other people who would take their ferret into the clinic at that point just so that they can receive the supportive care. I just felt like it was going to stress her out more than necessary, and I could pretty much do everything that they would have offered me from home. The emergency clinic is also a 45-minute drive from me, and I was just worried to take her for that 45-minute drive, cause her a whole bunch of stress, which might have just made the blockage worse. Basically, I think that if you are in an emergency situation like this, it's really different depending on like everything going on, and it's really hard to give a black or white answer of this is when you should go into the emergency clinic and this is when you should stay home, because there are just so many different factors. If the exotic clinic had been open, in a heartbeat I would have gone into the exotic clinic, because I know that they actually could have done something, and if she needed surgery they could have performed the surgery. At the emergency clinic, they can't do that. All they can do is take care of her. I wouldn't have been able to be in the room with her. She would have been super stressed out. I just didn't see a point to it at that point. But that doesn't mean I was opposed to taking her into the clinic. After I talked to the vet, I told myself that if she threw up 2 more times, if she threw up anything like blood, if I could clearly tell that she was having a lot of pain, a lot of issues, or if she started crashing or something, I would 100% take her into the emergency clinic. I started to pack a go bag so that if I needed to take her in, I just had to grab her and I could go. I put the rest of my ferrets in their cage. I gave Nova her medicine a little bit early so that I wouldn't have to worry about that. So I was ready to go if I needed to, but I was gonna hold off for a little bit longer. Once I finished talking to the emergency clinic, I also gave Elara a little bit more Vaseline, and she was willing to eat a little bit more of it, so that was a good sign for me. And then I kind of just kept an eye on her for a little bit longer. At 7:55, which was an hour and 15 minutes after I had talked to the vet, and in my opinion, an indicator that things were getting a little bit better because it had been so long since she had vomited or anything. But at that point, she pooped. I have a lot to say about this poop. I was still sitting in the bathroom checking on her because I'd been in there all night. She comes out of her kennel. She looks at me. She crosses the bathroom and she does her ferret squat, I'm gonna poop. Instantly I get excited. I'm like, oh my god, please. I hold my breath. She grunts, and I am not kidding you, okay? This poop popped out of her butt. I heard a pop and it smacked against the wall. An actual smack onto the bathroom wall. And she instantly threw up and went back into her kennel to sleep. And I was just kind of that was a big sequence of events to happen. Let's roll this back a little bit. First thing I do is I check on her, make sure she's okay. She's fine. She just went to go lay down again because she probably wasn't feeling very good based on what I heard come out of her ass. I went to go check on the vomit. Again, it had little chunks of quail in it. Kind of looked similar to the vomit that she'd been doing all night. And then I turned my attention about 45 degrees to the right to her poop. And I'd never seen this in ferret poop. The majority of the poop was this giant chunk of quail bone. Look at your hand. Do me a favor, look at your hand. You see your last pinky knuckle? It was half the size of that. Might not seem big, but when you take into account the fact that ferret intestines are the size of spaghetti noodles, okay? And a piece of bone that big passed through her and was plugging her up was my instant thought that that's what that was. And it was real gross because along with that, there was just this gross mucus and Vaseline. And the biggest kind of scary thing that I saw was that there was blood along with the piece of quail. Blood in stool is a not good thing to see. My first thought is that she had cut her intestines somehow while she was trying to pass this. And that's a scary thought because, okay, now is my ferret internally bleeding? So at this point, I have a bit of a freak out and I'm telling myself, okay, we're going to the emergency bit right now. I grab Elara, put her in the kennel, I'm literally ready to go, grabbing my purse, and then I just think, okay, wait. If I go to the clinic, they're not going to be able to operate. It's just going to be the same thing. Supportive care. Waiting till the exotic vet opens in the morning. What is the point of stressing her out more? So I kind of sit there and I tell myself, okay, that might have been it. Maybe she just cut herself a little bit when she was pushing it out at the end. Maybe it is not a deep cut. Maybe it was even bone marrow, because I couldn't really tell. It did have that kind of red color and texture that bone marrow has. I didn't want to make the situation worse by stressing her out and taking her to the clinic and causing more complications when she was already feeling terrible. So I let her out of the kennel and I gave her some more water. This time, she started out taking it from the syringe happily. Then, she started drinking it out of the water dish. To me, that's a good sign, because she didn't want anything to do with the water dish before. After that, I gave her some more Vaseline, and this time, she was happy to eat it on her own. She actually ate quite a lot of it. And then I just watched her. and I told myself, I'm gonna wait until she poops again. If there is any trace of blood in her poop, we're going to the emergency clinic. If she throws up again, we're going to the emergency clinic. If she starts to crash, we're going to the emergency clinic. So basically, anything besides improvement from this point, and we're going to the emergency clinic. I left her for about an hour, periodically checking on her about every 15 to 20 minutes, and at about 9:40, which was about an hour and a half after she had pooped for the first time, she went to the bathroom again, and there wasn't any sign of blood. Her poop was very runny, obviously. She'd been through a lot of stress, and it was mostly Vaseline, and she hadn't thrown up again, and she had already started to show signs of gaining back her energy, being willing to drink, being willing to eat a little bit more Vaseline, and she was walking around the room more, she wasn't wobbly, she had brighter eyes, and she was so very quickly improving in just that hour and a half. I said to myself, thank God, things are getting better, but we are not out of the woods yet, still gonna keep an eye on her. So I stayed up for another couple hours, again, periodically checking on her. At 10:30-ish, I gave her something to eat, and she was super happy to eat it. I didn't want to give her too much, so I gave her about half of the dinner that she normally eats, and I gave it to her very slowly, a couple little bits at a time until she was done eating it. And then I decided to leave her in the bathroom for the night, which made me a little sad because I didn't want her to miss her sisters, but I also wanted to see what her poop looked like in the morning in case there was any blood or anything in it, because once again, I was ready to take her to the clinic if that's what I saw. I checked on her a couple of times throughout the night, and every time she was just happily sleeping in her bed, no issues going on there. And in the morning, her stool looked so much better. One of them was a little bit liquidier. I assumed that that one was the first one. And then the second one she had was actually quite solid and looked like a pretty normal ferret poop, just a little bit smaller because, you know, she hadn't eaten as much. And her energy levels were pretty much normal. She was a little bit sleepy, but that's probably because she had thrown up a bunch and been through a pretty traumatic night. It's been 3 days since all of that, and she is totally back to her regular self. Her stool has been completely normal looking. I am still keeping a very close eye on her, and once again, if I see any other indications that she's sick, if she throws up again, if there's blood in her stool, I am going to the clinic right away. Thankfully, the exotic clinic is open again, so I can take her there if something bad happens. Thank the Lord. Yeah, that's what's happened with Elara. I would go grab her to show you guys her again, but she's sleeping right now and I kind of just want to let her rest because it's been a little bit crazy for her. Like I said before, I am sure that what I did is not necessarily the way that everyone would have handled the situation, and that is completely fine because we're all different owners and we all do things differently. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would have rushed her to the vet at the second time that she vomited because that's when I got an indicator that things weren't right. And because I'm an experienced ferret owner, I did feel comfortable treating this at home, and clearly, you know, things turned out okay because she's still here with me. But I did just want to share this story because I want to highlight, first off, the importance of having these two supplies. Once again, please check the link down below. If you are not familiar with blockage protocol and you do have ferrets, it's very important to know what to do in these situations. And I also sort of just want to share my experience with owning ferrets through the scary stuff, because in my experience, ferrets are really great pets, and I think that they are becoming a little more popular. So I think it's really important that we educate people on the bad parts of owning ferrets and the scary things. Ferrets are not the kind of animal that you can buy for your 5-year-old daughter and use it to teach her responsibility. You shouldn't be doing that with any type of animal. An animal is not a life lesson. Please do not buy a pet to teach your child to be responsible. That makes you a shitty person. Ferrets are at the same level of responsibility as a cat or a dog. If you have a family and you own ferrets, they are a family pet. They are not the pet that you shove in a cage in your 12-year-old child's room. That's not acceptable ferret ownership. So just please make sure if you own ferrets or if you're thinking about getting ferrets that you weigh the cons, which are these sorts of experiences, because it's not a fun time. I spent the entire night in tears, breaking down, and just terrified that I wasn't going to be with my ferret in the morning. Big shout out to all of my friends who helped me through this. You guys know who you are. I love you so dearly. From the people who were there giving me their opinions on what I should do, to the people who were there to just talk to me about something else and distract me while I waited for Elara to show signs of improvement or show signs that I needed to go to the vet. This is the last video I'm filming in this house. I actually wasn't planning on filming this video at all, but I wasn't planning on Elara having a blockage, so, you know, life just likes to spice it up a little bit and change things around when you don't know what's going on. But yes, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I will see you guys next time in my new house. I don't know what I'm going to be filming. That's a lie. I do know what I'm going to be filming. I normally don't plan ahead, but I planned ahead this time. Sort of. Planning ahead doesn't really get you everywhere sometimes. I mean, plan ahead in the sense that you have Vaseline and a syringe. This is the planning ahead that we do. The knowing what video I'm going to film next is the planning ahead that we don't need to do. Clear lines, I hope I'm setting. Okay, I'm going to leave now because I have other stuff that I have to do. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye!